Hello everyone, and welcome to my first batch of spooky reviews for October 2025. This is my third annual spooky movie mini-reviews series for spooky movie season. I've already got a whole plan for the month, lots of movies. I doubt I'll get to all of them, but I'm gonna make a good effort. Up first is 1990's Arachnophobia. An extremely venomous new species of spider hitches a ride on a corpse from Venezuela to a small town in California. When a couple residents die unexpectedly, Jeff Daniels' newcomer physician must find the cause. Trouble is, he suffers from a lifelong terror of arachnids. Some of you may already be thinking, nope, not interested in this one. And I get it. I would react that way if this was a snake movie. I don't particularly like spiders. I'm not a fan of any bugs or insects, but I don't have much of a problem seeing them. That said, watching a nearly 2-hour movie where spiders are dropping and crawling on people does give me an itchy feeling all over. In addition to Daniels, who carries the film as an outsider who must face his fear to defend his family, it also features Julian Sands as a surprisingly cooperative spider expert, Harley Jane Kozak as Daniels' wife, and John Goodman as a goofy exterminator. This was actually a rewatch for me. I had seen it long ago. I remember it playing on TV a lot when I was a kid, so I would have said that I'd seen it many times. But I remembered nothing except the barn and the nail gun, of all things. That rang a bell. This was directed by Frank Marshall, and it has kind of a slow start, but it gets better as the plot moves forward. Some may argue that this is not a horror movie, but if you ask me, anything that scares you or creeps you out or is shot like a horror movie qualifies for spooky season, and I am the one making the rules here. The spiders themselves, at least to me, aren't that scary looking. It's more about what they can do and how sneaky they seem and the angles from which they're photographed. The one shot that really got me is of the sink with the spiders teeming out of the holes. I believe this film used a combination of real spiders and animatronics, and those are pretty good. It was actually the webs I thought looked fake. They're comically large and very photogenic. I'm pretty sure you can find something identical at one of those Spirit Halloween stores. The movie definitely has humorous elements, and it never loses sight of its purpose, which is to be a fun thriller that gives you the heebie-jeebies. There are a couple gags that are kinda weird. I feel like the movie could have been just as amusing if it hadn't stooped for the low-hanging fruit, but it's an entertaining movie with a great poster, a reluctant hero you can pull for, and plenty of moments that make you say, ugh. Number 2 is a TV movie from 1982 titled Don't Go to Sleep. After a family moves into a new home, the daughter begins seeing her elder sister, who was killed in a tragic car accident. Like I said, this is my third year doing spooky movie reviews through October, and each time I've featured one or two of these old movies of the week that I've found on YouTube. The quality isn't usually the greatest, and it's even worse if there are a lot of scenes that happen in the dark. It's just too pixely for you to see what's going on, which really takes away from the fear factor. But this one fares pretty well, and it is a spooky movie. A ghost story meets the bad seed. How much of one versus the other depends on your interpretation, whether you consider the cause supernatural manifestation or mental illness. It stars Dennis Weaver as the milquetoast father and Valerie Harper as the mother, trying to keep everyone happy in their new home, especially as they've also taken in her mom, played by Ruth Gordon. Harper gives a standout performance as her efforts to be strong for the family falter, and I also felt Robin Ignico was really good as her troubled daughter Mary. A lot of the movie rests on her young shoulders, and she's particularly good at conveying the character's terror, sorrow, and sense of inadequacy. Thanks to the two of them, this movie actually made me feel sadder than your average ghost story. It has its creepy moments, though, including a noteworthy scene with a pizza cutter. The sound there gave me goosebumps. Kristen Cumming is also unnerving in her appearances as the dead sister, and the film has a surprisingly lush score. When I saw at the end that it was composed by Dominic Frontier, I said, no wonder the music was good. Movie number 3 is 1941's Among the Living. Murder threatens a bustling mill town when the criminally insane twin of the new mill owner breaks out of the secret room where he's been hidden away for years. This is something I picked to watch with my mom and my dad. Unlike her, he is not keen on spooky movies, and I didn't know if I'd include it in this video or wait until November, but as it turns out, it actually was a good fit for spooky season. This noirish thriller takes a lot of notes from classic horror movies. Overall, there's something Southern Gothic about it. The remote location in the opening funeral sequence is perfect, as is the creepy old house, all but abandoned except for the inmate and the man who looks after him. There's murder, there's chasing, there's a bloodthirsty mob that could have come straight out of a Universal Frankenstein film, and there's a stalking scene that could easily have been in a Val Lewton film. Albert Dekker gives a dual performance, and he's fine in both roles, though obviously the unstable brother is the more interesting part. Harry Carey co-stars as the secretive local doctor, a man who is both naive and self-serving. Susan Hayward plays a sassy local girl who attaches herself to her mother's new tenant, unaware he's a homicidal madman. And Frances Farmer appears as the sane brother's wife. That's the Frances Farmer, who in 1941 was a rising star in Hollywood. It was a year later she started making headlines, which culminated in her being institutionalized. You want to read something scary, read about what happened to her. I was impressed by this movie. It's short and sweet, it's suspenseful, and for something that's not technically a horror movie, it features a lot of great, blood-curdling screams. Movie number 4 is 1957's I Was a Teenage Werewolf, in which a very young Michael Landon stars as a hot-headed youth who is unwittingly given an experimental drug that turns him into a werewolf. The ubiquitous Whit Bissell plays the callous doctor who glibly justifies his actions and refers to his patient point blank as a guinea pig. There are strong Rebel Without a Cause vibes to this B-movie, although, unlike James Dean 2 years before, Landon's character isn't sympathetic at all, at least not at first. He's too much of a jerk to everyone. He becomes calmer and more disciplined after the drug is administered, as his violent impulses are redirected. The transformation effect is so-so, but the makeup is pretty good. That's quite a hideous set of teeth he has to growl through. The movie feels like it takes a long time to get going, which is funny because it's only 75 minutes in total. So when I say it takes a long time, I mean you're almost halfway through before things get wolfy. Until then, there's all this teeny bopper stuff, pranks and brawls. You have to sit through all of that before the attacks start. Once you get there, it gets better. Maybe you like the other stuff, I don't know, I didn't. In my opinion, it's okay, but it ain't got nothing on 1941's The Wolfman. I think the title was also an unfortunate choice. Like I Married a Monster from Outer Space the following year, it gives you a false impression of silliness that doesn't reflect the serious tone of the actual film. Movie number 5 is 1966's Destination Inner Space, which is not to be confused with the Joe Dante movie titled Inner Space. A military expert joins the crew of a civilian sea lab to investigate an unidentifiable submarine. After bringing a specimen from the mysterious craft on board, they find themselves doing battle with an amphibious monster. I believe I watched 2 amphibious monster movies last October, and I still have a couple more on my list. I don't know how many more I'll get to this month, but if I do watch another, I hope it's better than this. This was pretty mediocre. The plot is simple, there are too many long scuba diving sequences, the underwater effects are clearly just miniatures in a tank, the characters aren't that interesting, the flirty dialogue is cringy, and any attempts at humor fall flat. As for the monster, that is one of the highlights of the movie, and normally I'd try not to show too much, but since I highly doubt any of you will be rushing to watch this, here you go, here's what the monster looks like. Or alien, it's supposed to be extraterrestrial in origin. The design's not bad, actually. It's another variation on the Gillman, as amphibious monsters tend to be, but while the suit's kind of lumpy in the back, it's a brighter visual than anything else in the movie, and it's spooky enough. It does have some spooky music, stereotypical, but spooky, and there were a couple moments that got me, not because they were so brilliantly executed, but because I'd been lulled into a stupor, and then the monster made a sudden noisy appearance, and I was startled. It's not so terrible. I've certainly seen worse, and Amazon Prime doesn't know favors by offering a rather poor quality version. But even if there were an HD remastered release available, it still wouldn't be a great movie. Number 6 is 1999's The 13th Floor. When the developer of a simulation that allows the user to visit a digital replica of 1937 is found murdered, his employee plugs in to search for any clue he may have left behind. For superstitious reasons, many buildings don't have a 13th floor, so you hear that title and you figure this movie's going to head in a certain direction. However, it doesn't, and it's a stretch to call this a spooky movie. It's more of a techno-thriller. But it does have some good imagery and tension, creepy antagonists, and mind-bending concepts. The cast is led by Craig Bierko and Gretchen Mol, with Armin Mueller-Stahl as the murder victim, Vincent D'Onofrio as a technician and a bartender, both eccentric in separate ways, and Dennis Haysbert as the sarcastic detective. A few actors play dual characters, as units in the simulation are physically modeled after their developers, and this gradually adds a layer of complexity. There are also a number of clever twists, which tickle your brain, but thankfully don't make the film too confusing or hard to follow. Although I'm sure some of you are listening to me explain the storyline here and thinking, what? This sounds too complicated. It's really not. You're just given enough information at a time so that you can process it all. The 1930s scenes have a sepia filter and a certain cliché, phony quality, but there's a perfectly valid explanation for that. It's not like in some other movies where scenes from the past have a desaturated look just to be artsy. It's a stylistic choice that I'm not always fond of, and I feel like it makes people think that in olden times everything was bland and colorless. But at the same time, I generally don't care for it when it's oversaturated and garish looking, because then it makes olden times look kind of ridiculous, and I don't like to see a depiction of people in the 30s or 40s who just look clownish and unrealistic. I guess I'm hard to please. The present-day scenes also have hints of an unusual style, reminiscent of Blade Runner's mix of futuristic and retro elements in its clothing and interior design. It's entirely possible that this was done on purpose as an homage. But the film The 13th Floor most reminds me of is The Matrix, which was released just 2 months earlier. The Matrix came out at the end of March 1999. The 13th Floor came out at the end of May. Both movies have a lot of similarities, and I'm sure the people who were behind this one were chagrined when The Matrix became such a sensation, probably took the wind out of this movie's sails. It's still a big deal, while this movie has fallen between the cracks. Which is too bad because it's pretty good. The story's well crafted, and there was a lot of work put into the production. Its ideas are interesting, and they're surprisingly not dated, revolving around a virtual reality inhabited by AI characters. It touches on concepts of the sentience of artificial beings, their identity, their sense of free will. And these are things that are beginning to dominate our technological discourse in an alarming way. Movie number 7 was American International Pictures' follow-up to 1957's I Was a Teenage Werewolf. From the same year, I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. Whit Bissell is back, this time as Dr. Frankenstein, who follows in his ancestors' footsteps by restoring life to the mangled body of a teenager killed in a car accident. Now here's something I wasn't planning on doing this month. As we were heading into October, I made a huge list of titles and then I whittled it down to a more manageable number of 40-something, and this title was not on it. But after watching I Was a Teenage Werewolf, I became aware of its existence. I think I'd heard of it before, but very vaguely, and I thought, it's short, it's on YouTube, and I'm curious, why not toss it in? And I'm really glad I did, because I kind of loved it. Whit Bissell is great here. There's a lot going on with his character, and he's committed to his role of the impatient, exacting doctor. His co-stars include Phyllis Coates as his neglected fiancé, and Robert Burton as his squeamish assistant, and Gary Conway gives a sensitive performance as the teenage creature. Like its predecessor, this movie's got a silly title, plus it's inaccurate, but probably I Was a Teenage Frankenstein's Monster was considered too much of a mouthful. While it's a bit talky at the beginning, overall it's creepy and entertaining. More so, I think, than Teenage Werewolf. It's got some gruesome bits, as any Frankenstein movie should. It's 1957, so it doesn't get too wild, but there are some surprising props and visuals and implications. I admit it feels kind of weird to have a Frankenstein monster with a hot bod, but his deformed head is grotesque, and they're not shy about letting you see it. I guess there are two versions of this movie, a censored one and an uncensored one. Make sure you watch the uncensored version that also includes the color ending. Things take a very chilling turn. I was shocked, and then it builds to an outrageous finale, capped by a kind of random color sequence at the very end. I say random because I don't know why they did it, if it was just to be gimmicky or shocking, to give the teenagers at the drive-in one last thing to talk about, I don't know. Whatever they were going for, though, I think they got it. I fully expected this to be silly or clunky or cheap, but it's actually a pretty creative, disturbing, and dare I say scary old movie. That wraps up this first round, and I hope you enjoyed the reviews. You can find the films and where I watched them listed in the description, and stay tuned because I've got more spooky reviews headed your way next Saturday. Thanks for watching.